Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here at Watchbox Reviews. I would really appreciate it and I promise to update daily. If you love this watch, you can see it and you can purchase it on our website, thewatchbox.com. And today we are discussing what might be the just right size for a modern automatic winding Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. This is the Royal Oak 15450, part of a series that bowed in 2012. It replaced the previous mid-size references, and at 37 millimeters, it is just like every other Royal Oak, which is to say it wears far larger than its nominal size. It wears more like a standard 39 or 40 millimeter round watch, which makes it a perfect size for my 16 centimeter circumference wrist and possibly yours too. So it's a 37 millimeter watch, at least nominally, but it feels larger than that. It's not a thick watch, only 9.9 millimeters thick. It's going to slip underneath any cuff. It's from lug to lug and across the wrist that this watch really stretches its wings and begins to assert its sheer size. Because the integration of lug and bracelet, it wears larger. The watch measures a reasonable 46.8 millimeters lug to lug, but when you include those plots, and you can see they cause the watch to flare, I can't push the bracelet down any more than this. When you measure from the end of this intermediate link to its opposite number, that's the true distance across the wrist. The watch is now 49.1 millimeters, meaning I can recommend it for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference, and this is easily the best option if your wrist is 16 centimeters circumference or smaller. If you're like me, take this over a 15400 or a 15500 every day of the week. Now, pulling it off the wrist, one feature I can convey visually is just how massive this watch is. It is a lot of gold and delightful for it. Let's talk about what you get in terms of physical substance and finish. It's a Royal Oak, which means it's finished to impeccable standards. You have that flaring polished bevel that is razor sharp along the edge of the lugs, continuing perfectly aligned along the shoulders of the individual links. The individual links are so tightly finished that I can see the slope, I can see this curvature, but I can't feel the step down between the individual links. That's how tight the tolerances are. It's seamless. Note the attention to detail as the flanks of these links, see how close I can get and keep everything coherent. The flanks of these links are vertically satin finished, whereas the tops are longitudinally satin finished. And look at this. There is polish inside the bracelet, as these intermediate links feature bright polished ends that you only see as you roll the bracelet through the light. The bezel has a rounded edge that is of high polish, and it breaks perfectly with the satin finished top of the bezel. Note that each of the hexagonal white gold bezel bolts, and they are bolts, that's how they're aligned circumferentially, but each one is slightly recessed beneath the plane of the bezel. That's how you know this bezel is fresh. AP's threshold for replacement is when the bolts become level with the bezel. Here you can see nowhere near, and beautiful high polish in white gold to contrast with the satin finish red gold on the top. You also note that the flatness of the top contrasts with the rounded profile of the sides. Hexagonal screw down crown to match the bolts, and you can see that the sides of the case with longitudinal satin finish feature character lines that run uninterrupted from the flank of the bezel through the shear of the bezel, the mid case, and the case back, and it's exactly the same all the way around. AP always doing things the right way with its construction, fixing the bracelet to this heavy and valuable watch using screws, not spring bars. The underside of the bracelet is nicely evacuated, so there are channels between the links to allow it to vent the wrist on a hot day and also avoid pinching skin or pulling hair. The watch has a substantial offshore worthy double deploying clasp. It closes sequentially, and you can see there's a lot of gold in there. The twin trigger system, meaning this can accidentally pop open. The swing arms and the chassis quite substantial. Like I said, this would feel and look appropriate on an offshore, so you know it's going to keep this watch secure. Beautifully executed. Look at that satin finish, and look at the AP marquee with polished edges. Even that small detail component thoroughly realized. All sizing the bracelet done with screws. Take that, Patek Philippe. Now jumping back to the case, you can see that the bezel gasket is expressed as a hairline sliver along the edge of the case. That's always been a styling feature of the Royal Oaks. Jumping into the dial, this is one of AP's newer and more compelling options. It's known as nickel gray. It's the grande tapisserie. Petite tapisserie is on the original jumbo. Mega tapisserie is the offshore. This is grande tapisserie. It's cut with a pantograph. It's made in-house by AP, and it features garnishing with faceted and polished and hand-applied rose gold indices, rose gold AP logo, rose gold hands, all of that to wear well over time and avoid tarnishing or oxidation. You also note that the interior of the bezel is all bright polished polished, so it reflects the indices as well as the dial, and there is a monotone date disc with a step down through its aperture for a little bit of a slope from the dial plane to the date disc. The fact that it's monotone means it blends in. It's there when you need it. It's mostly invisible when you don't. The case back. You can see this watch mid-J series, smack dab in the middle, 50,000 series J series watch, 50 meters water resistant, screw down crown, AP manufactured caliber 3120, 40 joules automatic winding, single mainspring barrel, 60-hour power reserve, bidirectional winding for smooth action, ceramic rotor bearings for efficiency as well as reduced maintenance requirements, 22 karat mass. You can see the coats of arms of the Audemars and Piguet family. AP wants you to remember that it is the oldest and largest artisanal manufacture still in the hands of its founding families and still run by the founding families, having been founded in 1875. A full bridge with a free-sprung index for shock resistance, an oversized balance wheel with a gyromac-style free-sprung architecture to make the watch resistant to shock-induced timing deviation. It beats away at 21,600 vibrations per hour, makes up for the low beat rate with a huge balance, 40 joules, black polished screw heads, linear Côte de Genève, and there is a machined but quite beautiful bevel along the edge of each bridge. The timepiece handsomely executed, and of course with stop seconds and a quick set date, it is the full package. You can see this mid-size, or perhaps I should say right-size, Audemars Piguet Royal Oak 15450OR and make it yours on the watch box. AP Royal Oak mid-size, full-size lume.